I bought my kids 4-H goats some years back. We called them the speed bumps.
Mm-hmm.
People would be coming driving down the road there on Marsh Creek, and generally speaking, they drive about 55 to 65 miles an hour on that back road.
Oh yeah.
And it's all pavement, but it curves through those little hills of Marsh Valley. And anybody who knows anything about goats knows that if you can blow smoke through it, they can climb through it.
Yeah.
So I had this little bunch of goats all fenced up in my uncle's farm pasture, kind of on the slough right there. Those goats, they wanted to be up on the rocks that sit by my house. I lived kind of on a rocky hill face, and it was good and steep, and that's where them goats would prefer to be. So this little bunch of goats, they'd climb out of their meadow, which had all sorts of grass. I mean, knee deep grass, and all sorts of little trees in there for them to graze on and browse on. No, they wanted to be up on this steep as a cow's face, rocky point.
I've heard
And
that.
they would cross that road, and people would come flying through there and almost run over them goats. I never lost a goat, believe it or not. But boy, people learned to slow down. And after we got rid of those goats, still a year later, people would slow down because they thought those goats might show up at any time. So we called them speed bumps.
That's funny. Oh man.
Oh
Yeah,
man, they were
that those
you talk about.
Yeah, it's amazing what a guy will do to get by. Boy, it was, man, it's interesting listening to some of those old timers, like I think it's kind of crazy cuz there's a lot of stuff that that was better. There's a lot more open ground, they're still running open range and stuff, but whether the same whole thing, it's kind of the same old story over and over again that how just how the struggle is between the rancher and the cowboy, and then the rancher and the bank, and it's and that everybody's fighting the government, and it's always been that story, just a little different technology throughout the years.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something I didn't realize how much control the bank has over some of these old ranchers.
Mm.
I've been dealing with a rancher here who it's it's been an operation that I thought the man owned free and clear, and that bank has so much control over him. It has everything to do with his business dealings with me,
Huh.
even down to him. And I don't want to give out too much information there, but I'll just say that it's a big enough deal to me that I don't know if I want to have anything to do with that rancher, because the bank has so much control over this poor man,
Yeah.
and I've never had a control me like that.
Yeah.
Never. I
It,
I've taken out loans to buy homes before, taken out a mortgage just like any other person does. But they can't tell me whether or not I can fix up a house.
yeah.
All they can tell me is if I sell it too soon, they're going to pull out a bunch of taxes. But boy, I'll tell you what, this comes down to whether or not this guy can even hire any help. And people that know ranching could tell me a lot more. I don't know much about the whole uh, financing end of running a cattle operation. All I know is that when the bank can tell you when to buy and when to sell, and That kind of stuff scares the hell out of me. I'm not sure I want anything to do with that in. I mean, if I want to buy a horse, I got my little stash of cash and I go out and buy a dang horse. And I buy him right. And if I'm
Yeah.
ready to sell him, I can turn around and sell him.
Yeah.
Same thing if I want to go buy a few head of cows. I have a little bit of money put away and go buy me a few head of cows. Nobody tells me what breed. Nobody tells me what age. I just go buy the damn cows.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yep.
that was on that day, the time it never rained. That was kind of, the main character, which, the guy said it was, he kind of just modeled this character after a handful of old ranchers out there in West Texas. And so this guy, like, his story went to World War I, cowboyed out there in West Texas, went to World War I and fought, came back and scratched and branded Mavericks and built him a herd, and and then had his place, but he was the one guy that wouldn't enlist into this drought relief program, and he kept paying higher feed prices because he didn't get into the program. But then the government didn't have any, all these NRCS or whoever, I think it was like, I forget what, one of those stupid government organizations that controls your life once you sign on that dotted line. And it was but they were talking about how his place was run down and some stuff he didn't have, but he just never felt he needed it bad enough to go into debt over it. So he just made do with what he had, and there's something to that.
Yeah, that's something that I learned from old Bud Williams a long time ago. Was that if you don't have to go into debt to buy those cows,
Mm-hmm.
you are so much better off because you get to make the decisions.
Yeah.
And I've always remembered that. And over the years, remember my little goat story. So when I bought a few head of goats for my kids to take in 4-H, and I just had 3 of them, owned them free and clear, and I seen how much money those goats were worth once you got them raised up, and I was like, man, you buy those goats for $35, and you could turn around and sell them for $135. And I thought, well, that's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
If I got $1,000, I can go buy a pile of goats, and all I got to do is resell them. And so I went and bought me a stack of goats. I just bought a horse trailer load, turned them out in the pasture with some electric fence, and every single one of those goats tripled their value just by relocating them to Idaho. I was like, wow. But I couldn't stand having them run amok.
Yeah. They're funny little creatures for a while until they're not.
Right? Until they turn into your every waking moment.
Yeah.
I was trying to work a full-time job along with trying to keep track of them 4-H goats, and I'll tell you what, I probably consumed a little more beer than I should
have. I can imagine. Yeah, my mom decided we needed sheep when I was in high school, and we had a handful of ewes, and I hated those things. We had one that, boy, you talk about just yeah, I talk a lot of bad on Holsteins, but man, they fight like a Bremer bull compared to an old ewe. They just lay down and die. They don't spit that lamb out. Just if that lamb doesn't walk out on his own, she just like rolls over and dies. Oh,
I have heard that. Yeah, I've heard that. Everybody that's into sheep has always told me that, and I've been around a few sheep farmers, and for a long time I didn't have much respect for them, but they go through as much hell as any rancher,
Oh yeah,
and they got to keep them sheep alive. You know,
yeah, and
that's got to be tough.
oh, it has to be. And then they've got such a smaller market compared to everybody else. You know, after World War II, the lamb market just about went completely. You know, I mean they just about killed all the sheep market completely in the U.S. But they never really have recovered from that. But man, they yeah, they're that's a tough gig being a sheep rancher.
Boy, I'll tell you what though, I'm one of those guys. I go to the Star in Elko, and it always floors me how much it costs to buy mutton to eat.
Mm.
I mean, them son of a gun expensive,
Oh yeah.
but you buy a little, you buy a lamb chop over there, and I mean, you eat good.
Oh yeah.
That is some good. Wow.
Yeah, there ain't nothing better than good old Basque food. That's man, those old Bascos know how to cook.
Oh man, and feed you good.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, if you leave out of there hungry, you're doing something wrong cuz man, they have to shove about 5 pounds of food down your face, it seems like.
I know what is up with that. You'd think that a guy was working for a living when you go to eat there.
Yeah. Yeah, I was trying to tell some people about that, man, but they bring out the salad and a bottle of wine, set that on the table, and then
Yeah.
they bring out a stew, and then they bring out something else, and then they bring out your meat, your entree with a big old platter of garlic fries, and then they'll feed you, you know, coffee and dessert on top of that. It's a whole ordeal.
But it almost sounds like we're advertising for the Star in Elko, huh?
I know it. it's it's funny. We got a little Basque place just down the road here too, and then then just for a little further down the road you got the JT in Gardnerville, and man, all those Basque places, and I'd say JT's and the Martin and the Star about the three biggest names as far as the Basque food goes. Those are probably the most famous, but yeah, that
Mm, man, I'll tell you, good stuff.
yeah, you
Good
can't hardly
stuff.
go to Elko without stopping in at the Star.
Yeah. Yeah, I think my daughter, she lives there in Elko, and I think she goes to the Star about once a week.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's funny.
Her and her husband figured out how to be careful what they eat there, and they managed to keep from gaining weight.
Yeah.
I don't know how.
Yeah, they just don't
They
eat
go
the
over there and
rest of
eat
the
all
week.
the time, I
That's
guess. But yeah, they.
man.
Oh, I do like Elko Town.
Yeah, it's boy, it's a good time. How far are you from Elko?
Well, I don't know if I told you since I moved. I moved back up here into Idaho um,
Yeah.
through through a series of unfortunate events. I ended up in Rockland, Idaho,
Okay.
and I mean, if you're going to be in Idaho, there's a few places in Idaho that are nice to live, like Salmon, Idaho,
Mm,
Chalice, Idaho, Rockland, Idaho, Idaho City. Those are the kind of places in Idaho that make it special.
yeah.
And Rock is beautiful. It's a little itty bitty town. And don't anybody get any ideas. It's horrible weather. And
Even
the
worse
people are
people.
ornery as freaking. Yeah.
Yep.
I don't
Exactly.
want any more neighbors. That's all.
Yeah. I know that's the bad thing about that's the worst part about this dang COVID is people are realizing they have to get out of the cities, which is a good news, but the bad news is they got to go somewhere, and it, more often than not, it's somewhere where we don't want them. Yeah, but yeah,
The
Elko
nice thing
is.
about this part of the country, no jobs.
Yeah, exactly.
You either
Yeah.
work in agriculture or you don't have a job.
Mm, and you better know how to work if you're going to work in agriculture. That's not an
Right.
office job.
Yeah, you better not mind having a little bit of frozen skin particles.
Yeah.
And you might even want to invest in a pair of electric socks.
Boy, I this morning I was shipping a load of dairy heifers back over the hill, and boy, I thought my toes were just gonna plumb just fall plumb off, and I wouldn't even know it, because they got to where they were cold, and then they got to where they hurt, and then you're not sure if they're still there. You just can't really tell for sure. I think they're there, but I don't
You
know.
start
Yeah,
when they really do go numb, it makes you concerned,
it
you
really
know?
does, and it was
Yeah, I've known guys that froze toes off. It's a concern.
yeah. I uh, I never did catch any frostbite or anything, but man, every time like I said, every time your toes go numb, you see the pictures of them, and you're just like, oh, I hope that ain't it. But never has been for me, thank God. But man, I felt like it this morning. It was about, of course, it wasn't even down below zero, but it was. I mean, it was pretty goddamn cold, and whew, I wasn't ready for it.
You know, when I was a kid, I was cowboying over there in Tuscarora, Nevada, and there was a real foggy day. And I remember checking the temperature before I went to work, and it was 20 below. And we trotted out of the barn that morning, and it kind of acted like it was going to warm up. And then I rode into that fog, and I felt the side of my face kind of, I mean, it just burned. It absolutely burned. And I put my hand up on my face and on my ear, to try to kind of block some of that cold.
Mm-hmm.
And about, probably 3 or 4 days later, the skin on the side of my nostril and on my cheek, just below my eye, and on my ears, on all the edges of my ears, it all turned black.
Oh shit.
And it ended up, I had frostbit both sides of my nostrils
Huh.
and all the edges of my ears and the kind of my cheekbones.
Mm-hmm.
Every year after that for about 10 years. Now my face wouldn't do it so bad, but the sides of my nostrils, just right here and right here, they would turn black on me so easy. It could be 30 degrees outside, and if there was a breeze, that skin
Huh.
would freeze again and flake off of there, and I'd have
Wow.
scabs on my ears. What a pain in the butt to heal up. I had to stay covered all the time after that for years. Now it's not so bad, but gosh, for 10 years after I froze that hide, it was such a pain in the butt
Well,
because every time you turn around, you'd have skin turn black and it itch, man, it would itch. But
I guess
yeah,
it
it just
gave you a real good reason not to do cocaine. So there's that.
yeah.
Yeah, it's man, I've never had that. I got to where the tips of my ears are kind of I don't feel much there anymore, but they got some wind burnt when I was up in Montana when it was god awful cold. Got that Chinook wind coming in, and it my top of my ears would start peeling, and but now I don't really like they'll kind of start throbbing for a minute. Like I can feel them throbbing, but I can't really feel the tip of my ear. And so I think they just got wind burnt and or maybe frostbite. I don't know. It was that Montana country's God, it's cold.
Yeah, shoot, I think there's worse things in life. I mean, I know a kid who froze off toes one winter when we were working up in uh, Osgood, Idaho, on the
Mm-hmm.
river, calving out heifers. He wasn't paying any attention. He just figured he was going to be just fine, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And he had a pair of those gummy boots on and wool socks, and it wasn't enough.
Hmm.
He froze a couple of toes, and they had to cut them off.
Sheesh. Boy,
Yeah, it's a real thing, you know.
yeah.
Sucks.
Then they get like that phantom what do they call it? Like the phantom limb syndrome where they can still feel their toe there even though it's not there. So still worried about
Yeah, yeah.
bumping on a table leg or something.
I don't know, man. I'm so careful with it. After I knew that kid froze off his toes, now if they start to go numb on me, I'm headed for the barn, man. I'm gonna go get them suckers warmed up
Yeah.
because I'll tell you what, I can't imagine having to get them suckers amputated. That'd suck.
Oh man, it's you know, it we're kind of in a little bit of a banana belt. I mean, it gets where it's
Oh
damn
yeah,
near, just it's cold and it's dang sure not comfortable. I mean, it'll get down kind of close to zero, but it doesn't really stay cold very long here. And it's not hasn't been really cold enough to where I've broke down and like wore my muck boots or big heavy winter boots. I usually just wear two pairs of socks, have a pair of wool socks over the outside, and then my cowboy boots. But man, when I was up there in Montana, it was just God, you couldn't get enough layers on. You had your big heavy boots on, and you're just trying to wedge one toe into your stirrup so you could get up on your on your mount, and then you're reaching
yeah,
down trying to wedge your foot even further into the stirrup so you can feel something, but then you're hoping the bastard don't fall down because there's no way you're getting kicked loose if he does, and it's it ain't fun.
yeah. I got a picture of me riding a bucking horse in a pair of uh, lace up packs,
Mm-hmm.
and they're a set of old whites. You know how whites would make that real heavy,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean thick insulation right there to keep you warm.
Oh yeah.
But they'd have air ball soles on them, and even in a set of big old snowshoe bell stirrups, you couldn't hardly get turned loose. I got this picture of me riding a bucking horse, and I got them big old white packs on, and they're flopping in the wind, you know, because I took the laces out because I figured, hey, if he does get out from under me, I'm
Yeah.
going to make sure I can get away, not get drugged to death.
Oh yeah, you'd snap your
And I,
ankle in a hurry
I
with
ended up
that.
with, yeah, but I ended up pretty fortunate. I never did come off in a set of those packs, but there was one day I graph day, I think that horse went to bucking, and we were going around the corral there, and I had a single rig saddle that I was riding. And anybody who's rode single rig saddles on colts knows this issue. If you don't get them suckers sucked up pretty good and solid, they walk up on them horses' necks, you know.
Oh yeah.
And that saddle walked up on that neck in about 3 jumps, and he sucked back and left me sitting on my face, still sitting in my saddle,
Oh
face
man.
down in the mud. Oh, I felt so stupid. But I also, as soon as I pulled my face out of the mud, they started laughing.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a cowboy move if I've ever seen one. Like yeah, you reach up to grab somebody's hand that's helping you up and they're laughing in your face as as they're helping you up. That's
Yeah.
kind of how it goes. I don't know. That's just that way. I can't help myself. I see somebody hit the ground. I'm gonna laugh. I might show a little bit of concern, but I'm gonna be laughing the whole time too. No, but that's just kind of how it is.
Yeah, winter time in cowboying it's not the funnest time of year to cowboy. I think all of us would like to just be fair weather cowboys, but that's part of the deal.
Yeah, yeah.
I,
Unless you
I
sign
always
on
figure if a young
seasonally.
guy, I always figure if a young guy is willing to cowboy through the winter time, he's probably going to make it in the cowboying world,
Yep.
because that's always when it's the least amount of fun. Trying to rope
Mm.
with frozen fingers and having to be up early in the morning,
Mm-hmm.
or even having to be up all the way through the night with blizzards and nasty weather going through while you're trying to calve out a bunch of heifers for some idiot rancher who wants to calve in January and February, which is probably better than half of them out there now still.
Yeah.
That's what weeds out them young folks.
Mm. Yeah, and I noticed in the feedlot, it's a lot of them will get through the first winter, but it's that second winter. Once come October, when the cold starts creeping back in, then they're like, yeah, yeah. I've had a couple people hang up their hang up their saddle pad after that. And I think I'm gonna call her good for the cowboy career.
Mm,
Go find a job in town. Well, yeah, it is what it is. There's it ain't that fun. Nobody likes the winter. I don't think I don't know of anyone that
right.
just truly enjoys the winter. I mean, there's aspects that people love about the winter, the whether it's hunting season or something, but overall, no, no. I don't even think the Eskimos like the winter. They just don't have, they just don't know any better to move somewhere else.
Isn't that no shit? That's me. I mean, you'd think I'd figure out that there's warmer places to live than Idaho, but I
Yeah,
just like it here.
the bad thing is
I mean, it's
the nice weather places are filled with people, and people suck. So
that's for damn sure.
yeah,
Yeah, it's not too far from here to get
yep.
down to, you know, Utah is a beautiful place
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't have as bad of winters as this windy son of a gun they call Rockland, Idaho. But boy, I'll tell you what, there's so many people. All you got to do is cross over into Tremont, Utah,
Mm-hmm.
and the traffic fierce. And there's
Huh.
houses everywhere. For miles, there's houses and buildings and traffic, and it's like that clear down past what, Tooele?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it doesn't seem like it lets up. There's just people everywhere, but it's sure pretty country.
Oh yeah.
And winters don't seem to be near as cold. They get plenty of snow, but it doesn't seem like it's near as bitter cold. But
But
you can have that place.
yeah. Well, I always thought if you could keep it between like 40 and 70 year round, that's about ideal. And I think
Yeah.
LA and San Diego are kind of like that, but yeah, you couldn't pay me enough to live there.
Now I have heard that there's still like, aren't there still a bunch of cowboys that work the Tejon Ranch down that way?
I think so. I think so.
Yeah, I think John Hart was telling me that there's still quite a few cowboys on that place. I don't know any of them, but
No,
yeah, he tells me that they still
yeah, I knew
go ahead.
some people that used to cowboy there, but I don't think they're there anymore. So I don't know.
Hmm.
I think they still run, you know, decent sized cowboy crew, but I'm not for sure.
Hmm. That's somebody I'd like to sit down and get some of his cowboy stories. He mostly just talks about where he's been and people that he knows, but I'd like to hear some of his stories about wrecks and what have you. He's chased a lot of wild cattle and what have you. That old John Hardesty,
Oh yeah, I've heard
just a
that
super
name.
nice. Yeah, John's a good hand. I like the heck out of him. He come to work there on that last place I was on. I don't think he lasted very long. It wasn't quite his style,
Yeah.
but man, he was a hoot.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I like listening to those guys that have been around for, and just been around and seen a lot of different things, and it's kind of, especially the guys that get, that bounce around a lot. There's a few that, you know they just move because they like to move. They get bored of a place and just move on, and those guys are usually typically pretty decent hands. And then there's the guy that's always pissed off at the last place he worked at, and pretty, he gets to listen off the places that he's been, and why he's pissed off at them. And you're like, man, you're rapidly approaching the end of the list of places you can. You're either gonna have to go back hat in hand, or you're gonna have to find a new line of work. It seems like, but I don't know. They're always cowboying somewhere. It seems like.
yeah, and they keep going back again and back again and back again too. That's what's funny to me.
Mm-hmm. And they'll cuss them every
Myself,
time.
I didn't I didn't stay working on those big places. I kind of moved on, but I still hear the same names as when I was cowboying for the Spanish Ranch 22 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Like you ever heard of Aussie Dave, old Dave Thornton?
Yeah, I hear.
You know,
I know the name. I don't know him.
I think Dave was on the cover of Range magazine even one time. I cowboyed with him on the Spanish Ranch, like I said, 22 plus years ago. And I know he's been probably on every big outfit in the U.S. and he's still bouncing around from place to place. And who knows where he is now? I'll bet you there's somebody listening right now probably could tell you where Aussie Dave is.
Yeah, it was funny. I have you seen this documentary that came out? It's called Cowboys. It just came out
No,
here.
I don't watch. I'm terrible because I don't watch any TV at all.
Okay, so this
I mean,
thing.
people tell me what. I don't even watch the dang NFR.
Yeah, I make memes about it, but I haven't watched a single minute of the NFR this year. But I uh, I make fun of it plenty. Or I make fun of the spectators more than anything. But there's this
Yeah.
documentary that came out here about a month ago, and they they were on 10 big outfits across the West, and so they were like at the YP, uh, in Idaho and Nevada. They were at both locations there, and then a couple ranches in Texas. And so I watched it, and I thought they did a pretty good job of. They looked at it from the working cowboy. Even like the managers, they were just old cowboys that worked up to a foreman position or something on these bigger ranches. And it was I thought they did a good job. But uh, one of the guys that listens to the podcast messaged me, and he's like, "Hey, that guy came out to take pictures of the ranch, and he's like, I'm in that documentary. I forget which ranch he was said he was from, but so it was kind of cool, small little world. I'd never heard of any of the. I mean, I guess I knew. Oh, Boots O'Neill, who's he's like 80 something, still works down on the 4.6s. Been there forever. I'd heard of him, but I'd never heard of these other. I'd heard of the ranches, but I'd never heard of the hands. And so it was pretty interesting that I was like, I know a kid that worked on the YP just here a couple years ago, and so I was like, I bet he knows somebody. Those little boys that they interviewed there at the YP. I said, I bet he knows them. So I will have to ask him. But it was interesting. You know there's a lot more cowboys out there than I realized, but it's still a pretty damn small world.
It really is a small world. I think, I won't name any names, but I remember that there was a kid that he was kind of buckarooing around for a while, and he got a reputation of having some sticky fingers.
Mm.
And, it wasn't very long, and he couldn't go to work anywhere.
Yep.
And I remember he went to work for a friend of mine. And that friend of mine, he's a very well known and very well respected horseman. And he told the kid, he says, if anything in my place comes up missing, he says, I will cut your fingers off. And he told me, he says, nothing ever come up missing from my place.
I bet not. I bet
But
not.
that kid had a reputation.
Mm-hmm.
It's really sad, but that's something a guy has to remember is it's just like old Dave Thornton. I mean, Dave might come to work for you.
Yeah.
He might not be there more than a year or so,
Mm-hmm.
and he's going to blow on to the next place, and that's okay
Yeah.
because that's how you do it in the cowboy world. I mean, there's a lot of guys who, if they don't like it somewhere, you roll your bed and you go somewhere else and you go enjoy your little tour, and you know there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong from going place to place, but you still have a reputation to uphold.
Yeah.
I feel like the places that I go, I bust my knuckles. I do everything in my power to do the best job I know how to do. When I'm done at the end of the day, I sleep good because I know that I gave it the very best I had.
Yep.
I don't I don't try to leave work early unless the boss says the work's done.
Mm-hmm.
And I try to show up on time day after day, and I don't call in sick. And if I need a job, everybody that I've ever worked for, they'll say, you know what, that's Scott. He'll work for you. He may not be here very long, but he'll work for you.
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, that's always kind of how it's been. You read back through to some of those old timers when they whether it was and I need to read a few more books on the old buckaroos, but it's as far as like like the high plains and the punchers and everything, they were. Yeah, it was the same thing. Everybody knew everybody from the other outfits because you all hit town at the same time pretty well. Or you'd see
Mm-hmm.
the other outfits crew straggling away from town, looking like death as you're as you're bringing your cattle into railhead, and but everybody knew everybody, and the wagon boss or the trail boss usually started out as the remuda rider or the jingler as they called him. They started out taking care of the horses, and then eventually you move into the drags, and then to the flank and the swing, and then eventually maybe point man or trail boss. And but they all knew all those hands, and it was uh, it was a small world even back then. And shoot, it seems like you think it's a real small world, and then you get. I guess I didn't realize it so much until I started this whole podcast deal. And man, there's a lot of cowboys everywhere. I've got several people up in like Minnesota that sure enough you know cowboying up there, and like shit, I didn't know there was anything but dairy cattle up in the whole entire state of Minnesota. But there's few people running cattle up there too. So it's a bigger world than I thought, but everybody knows everybody. It seems like.
Yeah. yeah, that is the thing. Is I mean, you if you stick it out long enough, you start to realize that everybody knows everybody else. In the whole silversmithing industry that I got involved with about, gosh, almost 20 years ago now, I started to realize that little old Scott Hall, as much as he thought he was unknown and just this little, small town silversmith, come to find out that there was a few of those silversmiths that they had heard of me and they had been watching my work, and I got invited to some pretty big shows. And I started to realize that it really is a small world.
Yeah.
And gosh, they kind of set up and listened, and I'm still, in my opinion, I'm just another silversmith. I just do something a little different than everybody else,
Yeah.
and that's how I got known by a few silversmiths. Is I do things that other guys don't do,
Yeah.
and the reason that I'm for it is because I pour my heart and soul into something, and at the end of the day, I have something that's a little bit higher quality than the average.
Yeah.
Not that I make any money off of it. it's just it's just a little bit different and a little bit higher quality than what most people produce. And that's okay. Not everybody needs to try to produce the kind of silver work that I produce, because if they did, everybody would be just miserable doing it, because it doesn't pay nothing to
Yeah.
make that high end work. I hate to say it, but I've been told for the last 10 years that I need to charge what it's worth, and every time I try to charge what it's worth, the people who buy it say there is no way I can afford that. so,
Yeah.
so I go along. I I do these things, and people kind of got to know me through that uh, industry. But I'll tell you what, at the end of the day, I never had the kind of satisfaction doing the silversmithing as what I do working cattle.
Yeah. Yeah.
You got to
There's.
do what makes you happy.
Mm, yeah. It's kind of a shame because your silver work is. I mean, it's some of the best I've seen, and I'm not big into the. I come from the puncher side of things, so we're pretty plain Jane on all of our gear. But I know good artwork when I see it, and uh, it's pretty dang cool. But you're also a hell of a storyteller, and there's a lot more stories come with pushing around cows than there is pushing around an engraver. So
Right? I mean, kind of like Wilson Capron said one time, sometimes the only time that your heart rate ever goes up is when you stuff a graver in your palm.
yeah, boy, you can go from being damn near asleep to you know your highest heart rate within a split second. You're lounging around the Brandon fire or something, and then somebody ropes the wrong calf. The old mama cow comes barreling in at the towards the fire pot, and boy, yeah, people turn into track stars real quick. Or you go out to tag a calf or something, or notch a ear, and yeah, you hear that beller, and whoa, you get quick real fast.
I got a little branding story for you. It just kind of shows how big of an idiot I am. But we were branding calves over there on that 3 string outfit this last spring. And the guy who was running the place, his wife and a couple of kids, little itty bitty stuff. I mean, just 3, 4, 5 years old, just itty bitty shits. and they had pulled in this little 4-wheeler, what they call a side by side buggy, and they had a bunch of stuff back there like coolers and what have you, and they're letting the kids play on this side by side, and we're heading and heeling these calves, and I come in there and I threw a heel loop on a calf as the guy was dragging it past this buggy, and I didn't realize that these little kids were playing right there. They had just kind of started playing right there. You know, when a lot of times when you heel those calves and they're too far away from the fire, you just go ahead and drag them closer to the fire. So I'm smoking right along, you know, kind of at a high trot. And that calf's stretched between those two ropes, and I mean, he was really, really moving towards those kids. And I'm not kidding you, there was mamas and people running towards those kids like, oh no, Scott's gonna drag that kid right into them babies. And I seen them just a second, you know, and I stopped everything. But I thought for sure I was gonna mark out little babies. Oh my gosh. You talk about stop my heart.
Oh, I bet.
I about died. Whew. That would have been, I'd have been fired on the spot. You know what I mean? There wouldn't have been no pack your stuff, you're gone tomorrow. It would have been get your shit and leave the branding.
Yeah, and all you would have
come back.
All you would have had to do, or all you could have done, is just hang your head and ride off. Because yep, there's no argument there. So, yep, deserved that one.
And why they brought them little babies in there and let them play right there next to that branding fire is beyond me. But,
oh man,
man, because you know that branding fire is one where it's sitting in the middle of the pen. You know.
Yeah,
they'd have been on the back of the buggy in a different deal, but they're playing on the ground. You know.
Oh, yeah, that's no good.
That would have been bad dreams for years.
Oh, yeah, I can't even imagine. There was
no.
I've never come close to taking out any kids at a branding fire. I've seen it come close a couple times, and I got knocked out one time when when I was in high school. We were doing some winter branding for one of my dad's buddies, and he had some pretty hefty calves and we don't head and heel. You know, I think you know, if they were like over 500 pounds, they'd head and heel them, but everything else just they'd heel and drag. And we had this one pretty big calf, but he's pretty scoury, and they brought him in, and I grabbed the rope, and my buddy Clint, we flanked a lot of calves together, so like you don't even count it off, you know, you just kind of look at each other and nod and flip them. And so I pull the rope, and he yanks on that tail, and it just slid right through his hand. You know, it's all shitty. And it was about a, 350, 400-pound calf. He was a big sucker. And sucker got up, and I'm, hauling on the rope, trying to lay on him. And finally, they're just like, let him go. And I bailed. And well, then he like doubled back, and so then I'm trying to get out of the way, and next thing I know, that rope catches me right in the bend of the knee and flips me on my head, and I proceeded to ask the same 6 or 8 questions I had just asked to Clint, and told the same story, and I have no recollection of telling either, but they said I laid out there stretched out for about 15 seconds, and then, by the time somebody's about halfway over there to check on me, I jumped up and took off running for the fence, and, and then by that time the calf was long gone, but it was a delayed reaction. But a little concussion never killed anybody, did it?
Oh shoot! Well, I'll tell you what, branding those big calves, it's never a walk in the park.
No.
An old friend of mine, his name's Casey Robinson. We were branding over there for Ellison's, and these were big fall calves. I shouldn't say fall calves. They were spring calves, but it
Yeah.
was late in the fall, late November or so. And were 6 and 7 week calves. They were big buggers.
Yeah.
And be waspy, you know. And of course, Ellison's had quite a few of them horses that were cranky. And Casey was mounted on the best of them, you know. Probably just like flying an airplane, you know. They're really good as long as you're going straight ahead, but don't ask them to turn, stop, or back up.
Yeah.
I know Casey, he necked the calf, and he rides towards the fire. I don't remember exactly how he got so out of control, but this calf rim fired his horse, which is running behind it.
Oof.
And that horse spun into the rope. And when the horse spun into the rope went over the top of Casey's foot and somehow got caught in the fur. And he tried to jerk his dallies and he couldn't pop his dallies. And that whole son of a gun come tight and pretty quick. It jerked Casey off of his horse. And the horse took off running and bucking around that little indoor barn kind of a deal. It was like an indoor arena, but it wasn't quite an arena. You know, It was like a half arena. And it's dragging him around in there. And we got cowboys and horses scattered everywhere. And this rope is wrapped around Casey's leg.
Oof.
And dragging the calf too, you know. And I'm thinking, this is where Casey dies.
Yeah.
The end of my Casey right here. And one of them Mexican hands, he runs up, he's got a knife sharp as a razor and pops that rope. But I mean, cut it instantly. It must have been razor sharp because I mean, it just one whack and it. And there Casey sit, and everybody kind of took a deep breath, like, "Ooh, man, that was getting ugly," you know.
Oh.
Not like there's any shortage of near-death experiences cowboying, you know.
No.
Shoot, I can remember thinking back, gosh dang, there's been a lot of close calls, you know.
Mm-hmm.
One time and I don't mean to go into storytelling mode.
Oh,
it
go
just
for it.
happens, but
that's what we're doing.
Gosh, I was thinking just now. One time I was working for Dan Myers over in Montana. We had this not a very big cabbie, you know, just maybe 25, 30 head of horses, and pretty nice horses. And old Terry Flankstrap, he had a big old piece of country out there at St. Xavier. And we had kind of been, me and Ben Peterman and Dan Myers, we'd been put in charge of this deal. Dan Myers was the manager. And Ben and I, we were kind of his rosin jaw cowboys. And we were okay with it because he was fun. You know, whoop. Are you still there?
Oh, yeah, I got you.
Anyway, Dan was a lot of fun because he liked doing things the cowboy way, you know. And so we're out there cabbing these horses, trying to teach those horses how to follow another horse. And we'd ride up on the flank and on the side of these horses and push them back towards Dan as we were training them to follow a rider. And we're doing this at a dead run through these pastures. And this group of horses, they were having a real hard time following Dan, and we kind of haze them and get them headed back towards him. And I'm riding this little paint horse that I got from one of the Indians there on the Crow Reservation. He was using him as a racehorse, I guess. Really bronky son of a gun, but man, he could run. And so I run up along the side of these horses, and this paint horse, he's only about halfway got a handle on him. And we were in this pasture that was mostly dryland alfalfa. And on the edges of that alfalfa pasture, where it hadn't been cut. The alfalfa is probably a foot and a half tall and all dried out, but I mean, pretty rank. And this paint horse runs out there to the side to push them horses back towards Dan. And he hit that patch of grass and it ripped his legs out from under him. Just, I mean, slicker than snot. Just whoop. Like somebody front footed him with a rope and dumped that horse on his head. And that horse flopped over on top of me instantaneously. I mean, there was no place I could go. I just went face down into that alfalfa, you know, and his ass hit my shoulders and mucked me into that alfalfa, mashed me into the ground, and Dan stopped everything, you know, and he just let them horses keep on running. He rides over to me and he looks down at me and he's like, "Are you alive?" And I stood up and I walked around and I'm like, "Yeah, I don't even hurt." You know, that could have been pretty ugly.
Oh yeah.
That could have been the last time I ever saw it, you know.
Oh, I was basically a feed yard safety video at one point if somebody would have had a camera. Man, I was working in Kansas doing that confined cow calf, and I had this calf with we banded everything, and he had an infected nut, and yeah, I'd been trying to like sneak up on him for a couple days, and you know, but I was busy, so I was, you know, if I could sneak up and, you know, slap a hula hand on him and get him doctored, that was what I was gonna do. But you know, if not, if the shot wasn't there, I had a bunch of calves to tag and whatnot. But it was getting where I was like, this calf needs a shot pretty quick, and I went out there and I just, you know, one swung it and missed. Like, you know, I hit him, but like he, you know, like kind of ducked his head. You know, it was one where I was gonna have to fish it on, and he ducked out of it. And then the race was on, and I was riding this old dun horse. I had a pretty nice horse. He was a damn good cow horse. Was not a great rope horse. He was an old feedlot horse, just cowy as could be. I taped him right at 16 hands, but man, he would get down and cut like a cutter. You know, he for a big horse, he moved nice. But he never did track real well, and he got to where he'd sell out to the left. I mean, right as you stand up to throw, he's headed left, and I don't know how many times I roped something and just, you know, I'd tie off and rope something, you know, with some size and just rope him and step off and let him yank over on top of himself. It worked for a little while, but he'd you know, gradually just revert back to that. But he was on that day, and we finally got this little bastard lined out, and we're coming across the back, you know, along the back fence, and I'm swinging. I needed about 2 more lengths to get up there and throw. And his calf cut up towards the bunk, so I, you know, had to run with him. You know, we made our cut and just about ready to step up and throw, and I look up and here's the bunk pad right there, and I was like, oh shit. You know, you get to where you're just tracking, didn't pay attention where exactly we were, and I look up and yeah, next thing I know, we're on the bunk pad, and that bunk rail's coming up real quick, and you can see sparks flying off the old Gilding shoes, and I was like, oh fuck. And luckily he turned to the right just slightly, and probably the only thing that saved me from just ending up on my head in the bunk. But he pinned my leg up against that bunk rail. We got her shut down, and then that calf just like when he turned, he slipped on the concrete and fell down right there, and I was able to just regain my swing, and I just threw it on him, and you know, I was tied on, so I threw it over on this side, and I was holding up slack trying to get him still, and shit, my legs swelled up from just below my knee all the way to the bottom of my foot for a good probably a good 6 weeks. I've still got a little divot in my shin bone where that 2 7/8 bunk rail just mashed my leg up against it, and Uh, I
Yeah,
just if there was a video camera, I would have been a feedlot safety video.
yeah. I tell you what, just yesterday I had something similar, and just as that horse was sliding up to that bunk rail, I lifted my leg because I knew something just like that was going to happen. I put out of the stirrup and got it the hell out of the way, and wham! He hit that up bunk rail, and I was like, "Shoot, that was
Oh
close."
man, it's no fun. I know that.
uh,
But of course you.
Boy, it made you snap your leg in half.
Oh, yeah, and there's a couple times where I didn't like that one. I probably should have went and got it taken a look at, but that was my damn fault. I ain't gonna go on workman's comp because of some stupid shit that I did. But I got kicked in the wrist. We were running some cows up to breed or something. I think I was preg checking one, and that old cow. Of course, when you're doing all that time sync AI stuff, and especially them older cows, they after about 2 times through the chute, they get a little sour. And this one, God knows how many times she'd been through, and she'd balk right there. And so I got the hot shot out, and I'm hitting her with a little juice, and she somehow kicked between the rails of the lead up alley, and just hit my hand, just right. Same hand I was hitting her with that hot shot, but it hit the handle of the hot shot and just jammed my. And I honestly just thought I jammed my wrist, and it swelled up bigger than hell. And I thought it worked like when you jam your thumb and it swells up, but eventually you get it popped and it'll go back down. And so I had my brother-in-law like yanking on my the end of my hand trying to unpop my wrist, and probably didn't help anything. And it was Easter weekend, I remember that. And we were over at my sister's house, and everybody's like, I think that's broke. Like, that thing's way too swollen to not be broke. And it's fine. And I told my wife, I said, well, come Tuesday morning, if it's still swollen, I'll go to the doctor. And it swelled up. It was hot at that point and everything. And I just didn't want to admit that it was broke. And the hell of it was, it never was really broke. It was like a spiral fracture on the inside, but it never like fractured to the outside. So it's not even like they didn't have to reset it or anything. So there's no cool story. It was broke, but not really. Kinda, I guess. So I still have never like officially broken a full bone in my life. I think I broke my pinky dallying a couple times, but like as far as
Yeah,
an arm or a leg,
that's me.
I've never had like a clean break.
Yeah, that's me. I broke my pinky dally, and
Oh,
dadgum, them dadgum dallies popping over the top of a horn when you're
mm-hmm.
dallying fast. You know how they do? They snap across the top there, and one of them caught the tip of my finger and snapped it in half. I was like, "Argh!"
Oh, you get something. We had this heifer fall down just in the water tank the other day, and it was one of those metal bottom or metal water tanks, and there was that thing's probably a good 2 foot deep, and it's about a 900 pound heifer, and the little mare I was riding was maybe 950. When she's real fat and sassy, she might weigh 1,000, but not a very big thing. And it's just like a single load pin, so it's not very big, and it was wet, slick. So, and of course she's in the metal water tank, just clanging everywhere. So I'm sitting back because she's spooking at that metal clang, and so I had to like float a loop in. Luckily, I caught a front leg and went to the horn, and we started sliding rope. Got to some dry ground, but by the time we got to dry ground, we were running out. We were coming right up on the fence. So then I was trying to pull her back on top of herself so maybe she'd roll on out of that tank, and I didn't have hardly any room to maneuver. I could have opened the gate into the alley, and I gave myself a little bit more room, but I was packing a wax cotton that day, so you get one strand frayed on that, and that sucker's gonna pop. And so I was just, we just kept sliding rope when we hit the end, and would pull a couple feet and try to keep it as tight as I could so she didn't roll back in, and give her another go. And we eventually, about try 6 or 7, we finally got her flopped on out of there. But burnt a lot of hide off the old horn, and old mare was lathered up by the time we were done. But that little shit, she'll just lean into a collar, and no bigger than she is, she don't care. She'll just try and pull whatever.
Oh, I was pulling one up today. You know how them fats will get rolled over on their back, and had one rolled up over into the fence. And this outfit I worked for, they don't want you to do it with a horse.
Oh.
They usually want to use a tractor underneath them. Well, her legs were facing towards the tractor, so she couldn't be lifted by a tractor. She had to be pulled with a rope.
Yeah.
And it just so happened I was riding my wife's little Mustang horse. And this horse, if anything, he has heart. I mean, this guy is all heart and about halfway handy. I mean, he is dirty cowy and has presence on a cow. I mean, he's not just cowy. He will get down and get eye to eye with a cow.
Huh.
So, I mean, pretty cool little horse.
Yeah.
And slide stop, turn around, pretty handy. But he hasn't been roped off of much. And so I'm needing to pull this cow up. I'm thinking, I'll use this rope as a clutch. And as he gets a run at this cow, because he's not big. I mean, he's probably, like most Mustang horses, he might be 15 hands.
Yeah.
And he probably weighs around, he's probably 1,200 pounds. So I get the rope on this cow's front legs, and I kind of get headed away from her at a pretty good lope going across the pen. And I take my turns just as quick as I can, stack about 5 dallies on my horn, and I'm roping on Latigo leather, so it's pretty slick.
Oh, yeah.
And it's nylon. So nylons are a little, I don't know if most folks out there know, but nylons are usually a little slicker than like a waxed cotton or something like that, So as I'm running this rope, I mean, it is whistling through my hand.
Yep.
And that 60 rope, even with 5 turns on at a high lope, he was still at a dead run.
Jeez.
And he jerked that cow up. I mean, he jerked her hard. And that little Mustang horse barely even slowed down. Holy smokes, the smoke was rolling off that horn.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man. Good times. But, wow. That horse sold out and run off. I mean, he was like, I am the hell out of here. I don't know what's going on, but it ain't right, and I'm gone.
Oh, yeah. That's it takes a little getting used to when that rope starts to slip and you hear that buzz around the horn. It takes them a little bit to get used to that. Yeah, it's
yeah, and
I had this old
not for the faint of heart.
No.
When that rope through your hand 20-25 miles an hour, that's a lot of rope going through your hand in a hurry.
Yeah. You learn not to grab down very tight, because that shit's coming off there in a hurry.
Yep. But we got her up, and he got a little lesson in pulling, that's for sure. But I don't know if it was a good lesson.
Yeah, I was.
Well, Matt.
Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think this phone's about to die, and I don't know where the charger is. I didn't think ahead that far. Quite frankly, I was having a conversation with a man on leasing ground, and I barely got done with that conversation, and I was like, oh, shoot, I'm supposed to be on a video call with Matt. I got to get going, and I didn't grab a charger.
Don't worry about it. It's no worries. I think we covered enough for tonight anyhow, so.
All righty. Well, hey,
we can't tell all our stories in one night. We gotta leave them wanting more.
Well, we got to make more stories. It
That's
takes
right.
time.
That's right. Well, if you're as long as this damn governor of ours doesn't lock everything down through the month of January, we're gonna do a little show in Elko on the 29th. So if you're have a
Oh,
chance
nice.
to get down there, swing by. We'll be at the stage door in Elko doing a little get together. So
Is that during poetry or what?
yeah, so they're doing poetry, but they're not doing any live shows. They're just gonna record it and stream it. Uh, but they're gonna have all those
Oh, my.
musicians and poets there. So I don't know. I think as of right now, we're gonna be one of the only live shows during open to the public during cowboy poetry. So hopefully hopefully everything turns out. If it works out, that's the plan.
All right.
So
Sounds good. Sounds good.
awesome. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in. Scott, appreciated you coming back on. It's always a good time.
Hey, you have yourself a good night, Matt. Thanks for having me.
You bet.
And
Anytime.
all right. You have yourself a good night.
All right, man. We'll
Bye-bye.
talk to you later and move your ass. We're burning daylight.